Hey, hey.
Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago. Wake up with Kandace and Denise.
Let's go, go.
Welcome to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates, your source for current affairs in Tobago, Trinidad, and the region. With the perfect conversations to complement your morning routine, I am Kandace Jackson, and let's get started with the news in 90 seconds. Vexing, disgusting, alarming, and dangerous were just some of the words used by the panel on the Minority Report to describe a voice note circulating on social media. The voices appear to be that of Chief Secretary Falia Augustine and Education Secretary Zorisha Haggett, so strategizing to provide THA employment for individuals willing to spread propaganda on social media. Minority Leader Kelvin Morris said that if the video is verified, then it is a slap in the face for Tobagonians who expected a higher standard of governance. Meanwhile, PNM Tobago Council political leader Ansel Dennis reminded Tobagonians of the Integrity Act, which speaks against nepotism and corruption, and the social contract signed by the assemblymen after being elected, which addresses accountability and transparency. Meanwhile, Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez distanced himself from allegations that he misled the Secretary of Settlements, Public Utilities and Rural Development, Ian Pollard. Pollard accused Gonzalez's office of deliberately putting the wrong date on an invite for a Wassa sod turning ceremony, which took place yesterday. According to Gonzalez, the ceremony was scheduled to take place today. However, due to parliamentary commitments, he was forced to change the date. Gonzalez published communication between his office and Pollard's office, notifying them of the change. Gonzalez claimed his office did not get a reply to the change of date and said he never intended to cause political bacchanal. And finally, all eyes are on Parliament today, where the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, is expected to make an announcement regarding the local government elections. Last Thursday, the Privy Council found that the government acted illegally by extending the tenure of councillors and aldermen while postponing local government elections for more than a year. And that was the news in 90 seconds. Well, viewers, the political landscape is certainly heated up, especially with this voice on this video that's been circulating. There was a lot said on the Minority Report last night. Hopefully you got to catch it, but if you did not, just remember you could always catch up on it on our YouTube and Facebook pages as well as our website, so if you miss it, just go back and watch it. But now we're going to get a comment from a political activist within our space, and certainly one that's quite familiar on this set, Mr. Anthony James. Good morning and welcome to you, sir. How are you?
Very pleasant morning to you, Kandace, and I'm happy to be here.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. James, after hearing, you would have heard the video and the voices that sounded like our assemblyman, our chief secretary. Of course, it's not verified yet, and we're hoping we can get some verification soon from the persons who it appears to be.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what do you think? What are your views?
Well, to summarize it, it does appear to be who you said, and given that to be the case, I think it's a betrayal, actually. We have to call it for what it is. It appears to be a betrayal of the trust of the people of Tobago. Because you have come to the public offering yourself, offering lofty ideals and so on, and they were planning to use public funds for their own benefit. They are not there to represent themselves, not for one stretch of the imagination. They are there to represent the public good with public goods. And that seems not to be the case. They were there representing themselves, and there's the offer to pay those that they recruit lucratively. It's mind-blowing.
Yes.
And
no, I mean, we know the nature of politics. For those that are in power, everything that they do, I mean, of course, it's supposed to be for the people. However, it's also so that they can maintain their position in power, whilst the opposition is there to, agitate and hope that, they can agitate enough to convince people to get them back into power. But, in a situation like this, like, how, should they have gone this far?
Well, clearly not. It seems as though they have their eyes set on the other elections, for political survival, to survive in power. Where I'm concerned about a vision for Tobago. Where do the people of Tobago go? Where does the history of the people of Tobago go? That's the reason why people vote for you. In order to accomplish the dreams, Tobago has a certain context which we know, and we need to get out from that context where we are in, and to change the living conditions, change the reality of Tobago. The job appears to be too big for the chief secretary. It's not something I take pleasure in saying, but if I have to speak the truth, the job is clearly too big. And instead of dealing with the weightier matters of the law, well, the chief secretary seems not to be able to do that. You remember the last Thursday in March, the House Assembly was supposed to meet mandatorily and did not meet. And you can't back that up with two sittings in April.
Yes.
And that's not a substitute, because you have to meet at a minimum, didn't say a maximum, at a minimum once a month. You can choose to meet 4, 5, 10 times a month if you like. But you can't carry over 1 month into the other. But the point there is that he never addressed the nation of Tobago, never addressed the people to tell us what really going on. And I think he'll be hard pressed. He may do his usual thing to run and hide again. The job really is too big for the gentleman.
In this age where misinformation seems to be spreading way faster than actual information, factual information. And based on the feelings of the people of Tobago in these last few years, where they were tired of 21 years of one political party reigning, and they were hoping for a change. Can Tobagonians expect anything from our leaders, anything good coming out from our leaders, as we're wondering about our political future?
Well, clearly the trust of the people was misplaced, clearly, and based on that one utterance there, he has disqualified himself actually. Fali Augustine, Zorisa Charles, and I'm saying this under the pretext that the voices we heard
with them
were theirs. They have disqualified themselves. I can't see how they can walk around Tobago now and even in their office with any kind of credibility, any kind of repute right now. They have totally disqualified themselves, and they were actually speaking, representing two constituencies there. They were representing the THA, as it was said, because one voice said from the THA side, you have to employ, they have about 13 people, and all we need is 5 to do so and so. They were representing also their party, the TPP, that they are forming, as the case may be. And clearly now with the TPP, if it has any kind of credibility at all and want to offer themselves, clearly they have to seek a new leader and new candidates. If you know what I'm saying. It is disqualifying.
But can Tobagonians trust anybody else now that puts themselves forward, given all that has happened? Does anybody else stand a chance?
Well, I would think so, because life has to go on. But I understand the reasoning for your question. It's like, you remember when the PDP was splintering we see people burning up their jerseys, throwing it in dustbin. I don't know if you saw those videos and so on, because people were really crestfallen and disappointed, really. And this is why we have to be so careful that when you put yourself up in public office and so on, and you give a certain impression, project a certain image, you have to be very careful to walk in that kind of capacity. And clearly, as I said here, it's not easy this morning to really pronounce on this, because this is really far reaching. When you hear your head of government, your leader, and you know, I defended the chief secretary and the first lady staunchly and very stoutly a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Because I tend to focus on the issue. And if we have to focus on the issue now, Mr. Augustine, people might be calling for elections now. Really, on this issue, he ought to resign, actually. You know. He ought to resign, withdraw himself, apologize to the people. If we are really a serious people, really, holding up strong ideals and so on, if we have respect for ourselves, you can't have a man proposing to violate our trust, violate, as somebody said, the Integrity in Public Life Act and all of that, but to really defile and to violate all the values that we ought to stand for as a society. You look at the oath of office, everything. I can't see how we can come back from this. The TPP, the PDP, whatever they were before, this constituency of people there, the government has fallen. It has fallen completely.
Is this a matter for the Integrity Commission to do an investigation on? And if found guilty, what are the consequences that Mr. Augustine can face?
I don't know exactly how the act is worded. But clearly we are seeing an intent and perhaps a pronouncement of some personnel that already exists and operating already. Based on that, but who is going to call them to account, really? As I said, I haven't read the Integrity in Public Life Act, so I don't know all the parameters of it. So I don't know. But certainly the population must prosecute this matter responsibly. Of course, you know, the propagandists will come out and the spin doctors and come out. And this is how rotten the politics have become. I want no part of that kind of that kind of politics, right?
Now, do you think it's because, let's go back to even Mr. Pandey saying, politics has a morality of its own. Do you think that, is it just because the system, as you pointed out, is rotten at the core, that it
influenced
it influenced a situation where, this new team muddied themselves?
Yes, I think so. I think they have learned from what they have experienced and what they have seen. The society, you can't have years of experience of corruption, of immorality and so on, and not be affected by it. You follow what I'm saying? And a good bit of that generation that is in power there now, all they had as examples is what went before them. You know what I mean? That's the culture. That's what they have seen. And what can we say? What can we say?
We're reaping the benefits. Reaping the seeds.
Of what was sown. So that's what's going on there.
What about some of the things that are happening in terms of the relationship between the assemblymen and the government ministers? Because we had a situation yesterday where the Minister of Public Utilities said, I sent the communication about this event for the THA to be a part of it. And the THA is saying, hey, no, we did not get the subsequent invites or about the change of date and that sort of thing. And, there was this accusation from the Tobago West MP of a shaping of a narrative that's false.
As I say, it gives me no real pleasure to even speak fairly objectively, because what we are seeing here, generally speaking, and not just in Tobago, here in Trinidad, there isn't goodwill, there isn't an honoring of the oath and honoring of the law, and it is confusing the population. Because under the law of Trinidad and Tobago, the Constitution, which the Tobago House Assembly Act is a part of, it is law. And the relationship between Tobago and Trinidad is also law. Right? The law says that the Tobago House of Assembly is in charge of WhatsApp. But yet still you have the Minister for Public Utilities in Trinidad spearheading a project that ought to be the domain of the Tobago House of Assembly. And since 1996 to now, that law was such. And up to this day, the Tobago House of Assembly, the people that we have elected, have not moved vigorously to make that a reality. You follow what I'm saying? But yet still you have in Tobago this talk about more autonomy and all of that. It's all confusion. People just repeating things that they hear, repeating a narrative and so on, but there's no real substance to it. What you're seeing here is that the regime is not militant and focused on its responsibility. Clearly, the regime, as I said, is not focused and militant in representing the people of Tobago. How is it that the person who is not in charge inviting me? It's all crazy, and there is no harmony between the regime here and the regime in Trinidad in order to pursue what is right, because they ought to be meeting to make sure that they honor the law, honor what is right, and clearly that synergy is not there. It's not there at all, as we can see. And I suspect, Kandace, that we're going to have a lot more convulsions. Yes. We're going to have a lot more. Clearly here, I'm going to say, primarily, fundamentally, the regime here is not ready. It's hard for me to say, but trust me, the regime, we are seeing it. It is falling down on so many different angles before us. The leadership is not there. The scripture warns us that woe unto you, the nation, the people, when your king is a child. Those are not my words. Those are the words of the eternal. And so that our expectations in Tobago have to be shaped by what we are seeing, by what the scripture has said. And we are seeing it before here. But what happened there, what we saw in the release video yesterday, really is galling. You have actually a plan, and it's going down like normal. If you listen to the tonality of the thing, it was going down like normal, and they're giving the interview, the views, send out the propaganda here, shape the narrative, and all of that to manipulate. It's like witchcraft. For what reason? Towards their own personal end. So what happens to the story of Tobago? What happened to the dreams and the aspirations of this next generation to come? And is that the example you're setting? No, Mr. Pandey speaks of politics as a morality of his own. He knows what he's talking about. But the Constitution, and which Robinson went to, speak to moral and spiritual values and the rule of law, without which no society can properly be sustained. You have a set of crime overrunning Tobago now. Tobago resembles somebody else, and not the Tobago that we know. Tobago is resembling somebody else as though we are now demon-possessed. What is the Chief Secretary doing to help that? When he can be in a meeting privately and making those kinds of selfish plans.
How does this situation hurt our chances of gaining greater autonomy and self-governance?
Well, the regime clearly has this regime here cannot deliver that. There is no propensity to that. There is no predisposition. If you examine the individuals, we don't know them over the years to have that kind of capacity, that kind of conviction, that kind of understanding. And they haven't really negotiated with the population over a period of time so that we can bet our lives to say, well, this is where they are going. We haven't. Fali Augustine is new to the politics. He has not lived long enough to have the real kind of conviction and understanding. And I said, you see it from earlier o'clock. The whole creature called the assembly has been a gigantic failure, because the assembly is a two-part creature, executive and legislative. And from 1996 to now, not a single law. We can't account for the legislature. We cannot account for the legislature. And you see it in the selection of candidates and councillors. No legal person contested the election. And when it came to the point of picking councillors, they can pick 3 councillors. Not one was a legal secretary. I don't know how much more conviction that we need to have.
But now we come to a situation where we in Tobago, we the people, are having to deal with the consequences of their bad choices in governance. How should we feel? What should be our actions? You know,
and it's a reasonable question, because what has shown up before us. Now remember, they were saying that they will do things different.
Yes.
And the reason for doing things different is because what was there wasn't good and still isn't good. So that going back to what wasn't good is not an option. It is clearly not an option. There is no vision going forward. They are not on Tobago, because you have had PNM there and PNM here for donkeys years, and we have not moved constitutionally. We have not moved. That's the fact of the matter. So we can't go back. The population has to understand that. We can't go back to the PNM. What has promoted itself, pushed itself forward as PDP and then TPP, clearly we see that it has collapsed before us. And clearly maybe it's God talking to us that we must be looking for some new entity that can really take Tobago forward and fulfill our dreams and aspirations. That's the way I see it.
And that's where we're going to have to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Mr. James, for giving us your perspective on these issues. And we're certainly looking to see what happens next. It's going to be a long road from here.
Well, let me thank you and thank Tobago Updates for having me.
Anytime. All right, viewers, we've got a lot more coming up for you on the program, so please don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this break.
It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new dawning as the passion start to rise.